This week, VH1's Hip Hop Honors Show paid tribute to the original hip hop movie Wild Style, the masterpiece of guerrilla filmmaking that was done 25 years ago right in the South Bronx where hip hop was taking shape, and that featured hip hop's real life pioneers in all the starring roles. The other day, I had the honor of sitting down with the director of Wild Style, Charlie Ahearn, and he told me a bunch of stories about what it was like putting Wild Style together and how he sees the movie fitting in with hip hop's history.
My mother has a saying, she likes to quote a line from the I Ching, the beginning contains the seeds of all it is to follow.
Yeah.
And what you see in the film to me is, although there's a really amazing innocence to the time that you capture, you also kind of have a lot of the internal struggles that went on in hip-hop in years to come as far as the relationship between art and commerce, the sort of outside interlopers coming in the form of the downtown art scene. You have what people think of as bling nowadays. You have Busy Bee writing out his name and money,
right,
or at least the B. You know, you have Double Trouble coming out with the fake guns at the end.
You definitely have the gangsters, the stick-up
and
guys.
And the A to the K, and the infamous A to the K guys.
Yeah, those guys were for real. They were on the set when we were shooting the Cold Crush Brothers, and I saw them over in the corner, and I said, I came over to them and I said, how would you guys like to play some stick-up kids? And they were like, bet. And I said, okay, well, meet us here tomorrow night at 10 o'clock, and we're going to shoot this scene. Now, you got to understand, we're shooting in the South Bronx. We have no security. There's no police anywhere. We have a full set of camera equipment. We're out on the street at 2 a.m. and I give this guy who I'd never met before what I considered an incredibly good-looking prop gun. And he takes one look at it, he feels it, and he says, I can't use this. This is a pussy gun. I say, so why? I was really proud of the fact that it was heavy. And he said no, and he reached right behind him. He had his car parked along the road right where we were shooting it, and he popped the front door on the driver's side, reached under the seat, and pulled out this rusty old sawed-off shotgun. And I really was impressed. I thought, this thing looks gangster to me. And I was so polite that I didn't ask him to check the chamber. I thought that was really impolite. So he did the lines A to the K,
A to the K,
A to the K, and his friends answered back A to the motherfucking C, and that was it. And sorry for that curse, but anyway, that's the words they use, and I didn't write those lines. That was for real.
That's great. And that's another great thing about the film, is that it captures a lot of what the South Bronx was like at that time. Can you describe what it was like going to get to know the South Bronx in the early 80s?
Well, the thing was that everyone at that time was aware that the South Bronx was a complete disaster. Even Ronald Reagan was going to the South Bronx and posing on Charlotte Street in front of like 6 solid blocks of empty buildings burnt out over the past several years. It looked like Berlin after World War II. It was the worst disaster that America had ever seen in its entire history, and there was no real good explanation for its existence. This was a complete shame to our to American society, etc. And so everyone knew that the South Bronx was like this, and you had this movie called Fort Apache, The Bronx, which came out like a year before we started making this in 1979, and it really portrayed people in the Bronx as drug dealing, baseball bat wielding gangster, shooting up drugs and killing each other and throwing their bodies off the roof. And people really protested at that time during the screening of the movie because they felt that they were being racially stereotyped as animals and as these sort of primitive, dangerous characters. And so that when we made the movie, really what we were trying to do was shock people on how creative and positive people were in the Bronx.
I'm looking for the graffiti artist. We are all graffiti artists.
So the movie is pretty light on whatever you might call gangster or, the sort of decadent aspects of poverty. I felt people know about this, and this is a stereotype. In terms of what's really interesting about these people is how powerful their instincts are to be creative and how they can stand up for themselves. And that was a reality. Wasn't a fiction.
Mm-hmm. Which would lead up to obvious comments on my part as far as how hip-hop represents itself today. But
if you talk to people like Kaz and people that were there at the time, or Grandmaster Flash, they would say, like, we did this to get away from the gangs. We did this to get away from all these guys, wanting to stick you up in front of parties. This is not cool. People that are trying to stick you up, or people that are in prison, it's not cool to be in prison. I'm sorry. Everyone had cousins in prison. That was not what they were trying to do. And it's not as if they didn't experience that. The people that were real at the time all had these experiences, and they were trying to get over and to get beyond that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They weren't trying to prove that they went to prison or prove that they knew people that had guns.